Testing, testing, testing.
Council come to order. Clerk, call the roll.
County City, Shiloh, Moore, Wilton, Shafer, Kern.
Council meeting of December 29th, 1966. Except for those items listed under miscellaneous communications, please make known your desire to speak when the council is considering a specific item by approaching the podium or by leaving your name with the city clerk prior to the meeting. Under the special order of business, we have two items. We have two Girl Scouts troops listed individually, so I'll start off by introducing troop number 21. Is Mrs. Donnelly in the audience? Ms. Donnelly, I'm wondering if you might have the girls from troop 21 stand up and be recognized by the council. Fine. Well, not to be outdone by troop 21, we also have some Girl Scouts here from troop 40. Is Mrs. Dorothy Benson with them? Hi, Mrs. Benson. If you'd have your girls get up and get their equal amount of applause. Could we find out what areas they're from there, Mr. Chairman? Fine. Mrs. Donnelly, could you tell us where Troop 21 is from? St. Patrick's and North Park. All right, now let's see if the Protestants are represented. I see. Real fun. Well, we're real pleased to see the number of young people that have been taking the interest to come down to their city government. Too often we have people that are even born in San Diego, grow old, and leave us, and during a whole lifetime never once come down and even visit the people supposedly that control the purse strings and affect their taxes and every other thing. And it's really good to see young people taking the interest that you people are taking this morning to come down and see how government actually does work. So moving along then to resolutions, item number 3 is awarding a contract for furnishing a rerun of 10,000 four-color stadium brochures and 5,000 matching envelopes. This will be for stadium promotional use. Item 3.
Adopt.
The vote is unanimous with districts 1, 2, 5, 7, 8, and chairman voting in favor. Item number 4, awarding a contract for the re-roofing of Fire Department headquarters and Fire Engine Company number 2 at 1171 10th Avenue.
Adopt. 4.
Second.
Question to the manager.
Of the manager, Mr. Shafer.
Mr. Manager, how long do we expect to be at 1171 10th Avenue for our headquarters company there? Is it a matter of 4, 5, 6 years?
3 to 4 years. This is a minimum type re-roofing job. It has to be done because presently we are having water leakage that no longer can be repaired in the headquarters facility.
We're not putting a 25-year roof on a building we're going to
No, sir. This roof will probably just get us by the length of time we're going to stay there.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Item number 4. Vote is unanimous. Item number 5, accepting the offer of Hackett Interior Systems Incorporated for furnishing all the labor, equipment, and material required to remove, relocate, and install interior partitioning on the 8th floor and the basement of the City Administration Building. Item number 5. 5 is carried unanimously. Item 6, inviting bids for the improvement of Sandrock Road between U.S. Highway 80 and Friars Road, and Mission Center Road between Friars Road and 1,400 feet south. Item 6.
Adopt. 6. Second.
Item 6 carries unanimous.
Could I ask a question on this while we're there? Sandrock Road, are they going to improve it and complete it?
Yes, sir, this will improve it.
I mean, across the river bottom?
No, the river bottom crossing will be a temporary section of the road itself. Connect to a structure on the east, on the north side at Friars Road.
It won't go on north right now.
No, this will not carry on north at the present time. This will provide a connection between Friars Road and US 80.
Any further questions on item 6, Mr. Miles?
Drop 7? We've adopted 6.
Accepting the work done, I got the message. Accepting the work done and authorizing a notice of completion in Lakeshore Unit Number 11 Subdivision.
Second.
Item number 7 is unanimous. Item 8, authorizing a license agreement with H.G. Fenton Material Company Incorporated, permitting the city to use a portion of Fenton's property for storage of material for the San Diego Stadium. Item number 8.
Stop 8.
Item number 8 is carried unanimously. Item number 9, accepting the permit granting permission to the City of San Diego for the use of a temporary public roadway or roadways adjacent to Friars Road during the realignment improvement of Friars Road and the construction of a portion of Sandrock Road on the conditions therein expressed. Item number 9.
Is this for consideration?
This is a temporary permit to allow us to go ahead on this project pending the execution of an agreement between Consolidated Rock Company and Russell Grant on the entire right-of-way.
Are we giving consideration just for the permit itself?
Not to my knowledge, no, sir. Let me check it.
Mr. Morrow.
Mr. Morrow wants to know what it is.
This is on item number 9, the city attorney accepting the permit granting permission for the city of San Diego for temporary roadways, and the question that was raised was any consideration given for the permit?
Is this just a gratis?
Grant's here and indicates no.
Mr. Grant, would you like to speak to this point then?
My name is Russell Grant. I'm one of the signers of this permit along with San Diego Consolidated Co. There is no consideration at all. This matter came up after the negotiations on the Friar Road and Sandrock Road. Purely gratis on our part, subject to certain conditions to hold it harmless, restoration, and items of that nature.
Adopt 9.
Second.
Item 9 is carried unanimously. Number 10, renaming Pasquale Road Francisco Drive. Planning Commission voted 6-0 to approve the name change. Item 10.
Adopt 10.
Second.
Item 10 is carried unanimously. Item 11, declaring Cowles Mountain Boulevard, Boulder Lake Avenue, Bisbee Lake Avenue, Lake Adlin Drive, and San Carlos Drive for the entire length of each street to be a through street. Item 11.
Adopt 11.
Second. Question to the manager.
Question to the manager from Mr. Shafer on item 11.
Mr. Ron, what is the significance of declaring all these to be through streets? I've always done it, I just really never known.
As through streets enables our traffic division to place stop signs on such streets to allow uninterrupted traffic flow on them.
Thank you.
Item 11 is carried unanimously. Item 12, declaring Gullstrand Street between Governor Drive and its northern terminus to be a through street.
Adopt 12.
Second.
Item 12 carries unanimously. Item 13, declaring Pennant Way between Regents Road and Stresemann Street to be a through street. Item 13.
Second.
Item 13 carries unanimously. Item 14, declaring Seminole Drive for its entire length to be a through street.
Adopt 14.
Second.
Item 14 carries unanimously. Item 15, approving the official statement entitled Official Statement City of San Diego Street Improvement Bonds, Genesee Avenue, Eastgate Mall Assessment District, authorizing distribution of same to prospective purchasers of the bonds referred to therein. Item number 15, question, Mrs. Cobb.
Yes, I don't recall seeing this kind of thing done before, at least not us approving it or approving the statement. Could there be some comment on this from the attorney and or the manager?
Oh, yes, this type of prospectus is prepared in the case of all 1913 Act projects. It is not used in connection with 1911 Act projects. In 1911 Act projects, though, you understand the differentiation here. The contractor bids, he either takes the bonds or sells the bonds, and he is a negotiating person. In the case of 1913 Act, the bonds are sold prior to the construction being undertaken. They're sold by the city treasurer rather than the contractor. So in order to get the best value on the bond, a prospectus is prepared to get the best price.
Well, did we follow the same procedure, for example, on the 1913 project in relation to Sharp Hospital?
Well, this is the one by Sharp Hospital.
Well, what was the one we had before?
You had a 1913 Act project on Miramar Road this couple of 3 years back, as I recall,
And we did
where
this
this same thing was done.
By Legal Counsel Act?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions on item 15?
Adopt this.
Second.
Is there a reason why we, Mr. Mayor, is there a reason why we received this booklet only today?
Mr. Manager?
Makes it extremely difficult to know it.
Unfortunately, it just arrived from the printers yesterday afternoon, Councilman Hahn.
What does this really get us
prospectus
into?
is simply a statement of facts of the city's tax rate, the city's population, the participants, the financial participants in the project, all of which council has approved at the time we set up this project. If you recall, this is the one on Genesee Street running up by the Scripps Hospital and by La Jolla Day School. This was before council, I don't know, a month or so ago, at which time we did give you the complete breakdown of financing of it and the whole picture on it.
Does this
Tomorrow.
locks us in? Is that correct? I mean, in other words, for example, where it says the breakdown, and it says city's contribution is going to be a little more than half of the project, almost $500,000. Does that mean that we, the city, are committed to do this now?
Yes, sir. You were committed before today to do that. This was the action you took at the previous time this matter came before council. Today, all you have before you is a matter of approving a document which is used in connection with the selling of the bond. The financial distribution of costs was approved by city council prior to this meeting.
Did we approve of these things one at a time, or I mean, was it a cumulative thing, or was it all at once? I can't. In other words, I remember some Genesee Avenue things, but I don't recall approving of $500,000.
Councilman Morrow, as far as this project is concerned, council had the complete picture before them at one time and acted on it at one time.
It just boomed.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hahn?
Mr. Mayor, so to be clear in my mind, I recall this matter coming before us in the past, but just so to be clear, this booklet here is the booklet that we will submit to the potential buyers. Is that correct? So they can better analyze the program.
That's right, so that they can analyze the program, so that they can see what the tax rate in the area is, so that they can see how much of it's being paid by whom. Now, let me point out in this, so there again is no misunderstanding on it. council will recall, the city's participation is large, only because the city owns a great part of the land adjoining this project and will ultimately benefit on the sale or lease of that land for scientific and research institutions or other organizations that the land is ultimately sold or leased to. And the costs that are borne in connection with this project by the city will ultimately be completely reimbursable.
And then the figures that we have approved in the past, they're all in here, incorporated.
Yes, sir.
Question on item 15? The vote is unanimous. Item 16, authorizing the following named individuals to execute a public entity for the purposes of obtaining financial assistance under the Federal Civil Defense Act of 1950. Walter Hahn Jr., John P. Dooley, Fred Lawrence, and Jerry Lonergan. Item 16.
Adopt 16.
Second?
Mrs. Cobb.
Is this purely a matter of setting signatures of record?
That's correct. This was necessitated because the previous people authorized to sign, I believe, were Thomas W. Fletcher and Jerry Bales and one other, I believe, on this instance.
Thank you.
Brings it up to date.
Item 16 carries unanimously. Item 17, approving the City of San Diego 1967 legislative program. Item number 17.
Adopt.
Second?
The vote carries unanimously. Item number 18, authorizing John A. Mattis, purchasing agent, and R.L. Marcoux, assistant purchasing agent, to sign for and accept surplus federal property for civil defense purposes. Item number 18.
Adopt 18.
Item number 18 carries unanimously. Under communications, only the individual or a designated representative of a group submitting the letter will speak to the communication. These items are not subject to debate by members of the audience. Item 100, Dr. Hubert Stanford, President of the San Diego Professionals Association, requesting the City Council to petition to the California State Highway Commission to permit the construction of an off-ramp and an on-ramp to the Medical Center property, Alvarado Plaza, from the eastbound lanes of Interstate Highway 80 between College Avenue and 70th Street, connecting directly by way of Montezuma Road to Reservoir Drive. This is to relieve the access problems at the intersection of College Avenue and Alvarado Road. Item 100.
Refer to the manager for a report to the council.
Second.
Question on the motion. Mr. Hitch.
I don't have any question on the motion, but, and I'm in agreement with the motion, and the city manager does have this already submitted to him, and it is in the, there is a plan, and it's something that was approved originally, but somehow the State Highway Department left it out of their plan, and I believe with the city manager's request to the State Highway Department that this might turn out to be a favorable thing for our city. There is a great traffic problem around State College in this particular area. I am in agreement and second the motion of Mr. Kirby.
Question on the motion 100.
Mr. Stanford here? Yeah.
Dr. Stanford. He's tied up on the traffic at the intersection of Montezuma Road and Reservoir Drive. The motion carries unanimously. On ordinances to be introduced, item 101, amending Chapter 3, Article 3, Division 24 of the San Diego Municipal Code by amending sections relating to vehicle renting. Item 101, Mrs. Cobb.
I think this is an excellent idea to make this an administrative function with appeal to the council. I would just have one question. We had some discussion not too long ago about vehicles for hire, ascertaining whether or not these persons were legally eligible to drive these vehicles. I think we talked about cars as well as the motorcycle type of operation. Was there any consideration given, or is there something else that covers driver's license in the case of automobiles, for example, or some sort of proficiency with other equipment?
Driver's license is now required. The problem that we brought to council's attention, and one which we're now studying through our police department, is the one of rental of motorcycles to people who have never been on a motorcycle before, but who have a valid driver's license. This is being checked out to see what might be done in the way of regulation.
Then we can anticipate this coming to us later.
This will come back to council some later date, yes.
Thank you. Introduce 101.
Mr. Hum?
Your Honor, in regard to this, I fully agree that this amendment will have the stipulation that the applicant, or whatever he's called, he can appeal to the council for final decision. But I'm concerned, I suppose the whole council is too, why in the first place, and how far back it goes, why in the first place this item was placed, was an ordinance in the first place, or part of the code, whatever, well, an ordinance. Why was it initiated in the first place? I just wonder, knowing that the people can always appeal to the council, but the average public many times are not aware that they have this avenue, and sometimes they feel that to go to the council perhaps maybe a problem that it's like fighting City Hall, so they don't come to the council, although they do have that appeal. Now, just think back, I'd like to ask the attorney, many years ago, why was this ordinance initiated in the first place? Have you any record of that, sir?
Mr. Butler?
We probably have a record. I can't answer your question on the historical basis of why the ordinance was enacted to require the consent of the city council rather than the manager, if that's what you mean, except I would say it might have expressed a philosophy at that time that all of these matters should come to the council, who sought to maintain a direct control over them. But that's only speculation.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Why perhaps a problem was created in the past in this area for the reason we don't know, which is the reason why it.
Mr. Hom, we might go to our automobile consultant, Mr. DeKirby. Do you have anything you might?
Well, I think the background of this, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Attorney, is that as of now, before passing this new ordinance, the applicant has the right to appeal to the council, and that does not change in any way. The only change in the ordinance is, as I understand it, that now it does not have to come to the council for approval. And the applicant still has, as he had in the past, the same right exactly to come to the council as he had before.
Mr. Hahn?
Well, in the past, the ordinance read that the person had to first obtain written consent from the council of the city of San Diego. He now obtains written consent from the manager, but then if the manager declines to give any consent, he then has the right to appeal to the council.
But then, yes, if in the past he didn't get the recommendation from the manager to the council for its approval, he could appeal to the council.
He had to come to you initially. The city manager had no power to grant or to deny a license.
In other words, these were on the docket 100% regardless of the manager's opinion.
Right.
I think then this is a much better system.
Mr. Hahn?
Mayor and members of the council, let me point out that this isn't something we are pushing or desire particularly. It's a matter based on the council's direction of trying to simplify the administration on some of these docket proceedings. Now, actually, I know in the 4 years that I've been here, there's not been a single question asked, nor has anyone appeared before this council on this particular subject. We have had no problem in any area of it. And yet, every single one of these, and you end up with generally at least one each week on your docket that is completely routine in operation. Matter of fact, there have been, to my knowledge, none turned down in recommendation by police or manager that have applied.
Your Honor, I think instead of one each week, I think it's more like one every month or one every other month. I think my tendency here is perhaps although not perfect, but a little better than the...
Mr. Harm, are you questioning the city manager form of government?
No, I'm not. It's just that I like to move to refer this to the city attorney's office, have them report back in 1 week why initially this ordinance was put on the book, and then so I can better,
As a
so I
suggestion,
can pass better judgment as whether we should appeal change it or not.
as a suggestion, Mr. Harm, we're introducing it today and it will be up for adoption 1 week from now. We could, after introduction of this, then request, the council can request from the city attorney's office the report on the history and the background on this, and we would have it, could your office have it to us before next week so that we would be able to act and if we wanted to change it?
I think so, yes, sure. Yes, Your Honor.
All right, well then, without a motion, we'll consider that a report will be back before this is on the docket for adoption. And would this be satisfactory, Mr. Harm?
Well, I'd rather delay this until then, since we're in no hurry for this.
Is there any problems, Mr. Harm? All right.
So my motion is to delay this for 1 week until we get back to the court.
Second.
1 week from today, we'll be in Sacramento. I was wondering if
2 weeks,
2 weeks would be probably better.
Second, 2 weeks.
Okay, item 101, continuance for 2 weeks. The vote is unanimous. Item 102, appropriating the sum of $8,000 from the unappropriated balance fund to pay for the contractual services for office rearrangement in the city administration building basement and 8th floor. Item 102.
Introduced.
Second.
What's the 8th floor?
Pardon me?
What's the 8th floor? It says office rearrangement, 8th floor.
Mr. Manager, the one up here, will you give the report to Mr. Morrow?
Yeah, this matter refers back to the item that was earlier on your docket and covers the funding of the proposal. The changes on the 8th floor will permit the placing of certain storage racks for data processing, allows some moving of desks and other facilities in this area to put together employees in the two separate parts of the data processing operation that are now on different floors, and to consolidate in the basement area the services group, employee services group. And this funding will permit both of these jobs to be done. We now have a part of our employee services group at 20th and B Corporation Yard, and part of them on the 8th floor, and part of them in the basement. This puts them all together and leaves our data processing people take over the 8th floor area.
Item 102.
Occupied by the others. Excuse me.
Item 102. The vote is unanimous. Item 103, appropriating the sum of $5,000 to account number 1706-3000-2 from the unappropriated balance of the general fund to be used by the inspection department in the abatement of unsafe buildings. Item 103.
Not 103. Introduce 103.
Question on 103. Mrs. Cobb first, and then Mr. Morrow.
One question I would have is that if I understand this report correctly, when monies are recovered for the demolition or whatever needs to be done, they go into the general fund. Is this correct?
That is correct.
Has there been any thought given to making this a revolving fund?
It could be
Can
made
we
a
do it?
revolving fund. There are difficulties in doing this because of the long time factor that's often involved in it. And we would, I think, have to then appropriate to the revolving fund to take up these peaks and valleys in income.
Well, if I could
This
finish
could be done,
what I-
and since this matter came on docket, we've asked our budget officer to check into the feasibility of doing it. His initial indication to me was it wasn't too practical because we do have tremendous peaks and valleys in the income that goes along with this. And we spend the money well ahead of when the income comes in. So.
I was wondering, and perhaps you could get this information to me if it is not a part of your report, but what effect would this have on an annual budgeting process? And if at a later time you could get that information to me, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Morrow, your question, the manager?
No, I was just wondering if we're beginning to put more emphasis on abatement processes. Are we stepping the action up?
Mr. Attorney?
Yes, Mr. Morrow, we are getting more action going in the abatement of these unsafe buildings.
Is this a new change in the attorney's policy or council's policy?
Well, I think it in part reflects a greater interest in the manager's office and in our office in using the legal procedures to abate these nuisances. Also, we've got a couple of lawyers who have become very expert in the field.
Mr. Hahn?
I might point out, so council does not feel that we're going in as a city to abate any great number of these. There were 4 in 64, 65, 2 in 65, 66. We estimate 9 this year. The great majority of abatement of unsafe buildings is accomplished by the owners of the building rather than the city. And this only reflects against to those where the city has to move in and do the job, where the owners refuse to.
Item 103.
Have you got any idea of how many we've initiated but the owner has done it?
Well, to give you some idea, last year there were 151 abatement actions. The percentage that is accomplished by city force is very small of the total. This year we'll run well over 151, probably around 200, of which 9 will be undertaken by the city.
Is there any general criteria used as to what areas you will go in to ask the abatement, or is this selective?
No, this is done by the building inspection department, and as you know, you've seen the pictures of the buildings that are suggested for abatement. They are those which are considered completely unsafe, hazardous for occupancy, and a general nuisance to the neighborhood, and these are scattered all over the city.
That I recognize. My question is, do they go to, for example, if there's one across the street that looks like it's nearly as bad, and then they go to the next one, do they go for both of them, or do they just go for one of them, or what?
Oh, no, it's certainly where we can, in an area where there are a number of them noted, action is taken on all of them. And we've done this rather consistently, as a matter of fact, that we've moved into one area and looked it over in its entirety.
Item 103.
Introduce 103. Second.
The vote is unanimous. Under hearings, we have first a continued hearing, the 104, which, as you recall, is the famous 4-4 deadlock. It was continued from the meetings of November 3rd, December 1st, and December 15th, 1966. The matter of rezoning of Lot 14 of Block 2, Beverly, located on the east side of Euclid Avenue between Geneva Avenue and Hilltop Drive, from Zone R2 to Zone RP. The Planning Commission voted 5-0 to deny RP zoning. On item 104, we do have a request from the applicant for a continuance, and I think possibly, again, we're at the situation where we have the mayor absent, and we have the 4-4 deadlock, and this letter possibly might be a solution towards it. We have a request from the applicant that it is his understanding that the Southeast Study Committee will submit their report to the City Council in regard to the future use of property in the above-named area shortly after January 1. We therefore respectfully request that the hearing scheduled for December 29th be continued until after submission of the report and consideration by the Council. We do have this request. I would only point that rather than until the submission of the report and consideration by Council, that we continue it to a date certain. I think it would be more definite. And the applicant is here. Is there any question in the audience, or rather on the Council, of what might be a proper date, or is there an interest to continue it? Mr. Shafer.
Your Honor, item 105 is the rezoning of some land in the general area right on Euclid also. I was going to ask 105 to be taken out of order before we get to 104, but if Mr. Ritchie is seeking the continuance, I would make a motion to continue the matter for a period of 30 days.
Second. For how long, Your Honor? 4 weeks.
As the motion, which we have not had a second to, is a continuance for 30 days. And
that would make us on a Saturday.
right, this is a problem on continuance by days. Actually, it should be by weeks. Before we review the continuance, I'm wondering, it's stated here that the report is due fairly shortly from the Southeast Development Association. Is there, right after the first of the year, the scheduled time for submission?
Well, from a staff standpoint, this is news to us. Perhaps Mr. Ritchie has been in contact with members of the Southeast Development Committee, and perhaps they have discussed with him submitting some sort of special report. But insofar as the work program is concerned, we aren't due to produce the plan for that area until this summer, and well, sometime after July. So I know of no proposal to come in with a report shortly after the first. But again, perhaps Mr. Ritchie has been discussing this with the members of the Southeast Development Committee. I'm not aware of those kind of conversations.
Well, I'm wondering. We have spent quite a bit of time on this item, and we are at a point where we continually meet and lock at a 4-4 deadlock. I'm wondering, Mrs. Cobb,
I would move a 2-week.
A 2-week continuance?
Thursday the 12th.
Thursday the 12th. Will we have, Mr. Clerk, or is there an indication we'll have a full council on the 12th?
Yes, sir, we expect it.
A 2-week continuance has been moved. Was there a second to Mr. DeKirby's motion?
Your Honor, before I vote on it, I'd like to ask Mr. Ritchie what he's heard about the date of the report coming back after January 1st. And also, I'd hope that the action we take today on 105 might bear some significance on what action we'll take on 104 ultimately.
Mr. Shafer, we're on item 104, and we have no motion before us then right now. So if you would speak to your request on the continuance, then Mr. Ritchie, okay?
We have had a verbal report from several members of the committee, including the chairman, that they expect to submit a report to the city council on their recommendations for the particular area right after the first of the year.
We do have then a request for a continuance until after the first of the year. Now, do I stand corrected? I thought that Mr. DeKirby made the motion, but I think Mrs. Cobb made the motion and Mr. DeKirby seconded it.
Right.
I thought we had a case of Mr. DeKirby making a motion and then seconding it. All right, we do have a motion before us, which is a continuance for a 2-week period. Mr. Scheidel on the continuance.
Yes, Your Honor. If the continuance of this is to have a full council, that's one reason. If the continuance is to wait for a report from miscellaneous verbal conversation from some members of a committee that are going to bring in a report that really has no basis whatsoever to this council. If they're developing a plan out there and it'll be before the planning commission and then eventually adopted and come through to this council, you're talking 6 or 8 months. So I don't think that we should put any weight on a report that's going to come from these groups. In fact, I think this council is asked that the groups stay out of zoning. For planning, all right, but not for zoning. Now, if we're continuing this for this purpose of getting a communication from these people on zone changes, I think we're making a mistake.
I think Mrs. Cobb made it quite clear the continuance was for a full council. Mrs. Cobb?
That was my purpose of my second, for a full council and not for any report.
All right, we have a continuance request, or rather a continuance motion for a 2-week period. Question on the motion to continue. Is that sufficient time? We have got a full council. Yes, the clerk indicates that unless there's an unforeseen absence, that 2 weeks from now we will have a full council.
So Mr. Walsh, since that was given as one of the primary reasons for not recommending this zone change, the
fact that they were waiting for the report by this study committee would certainly seem to me that there should be some consideration given to when this committee submits its report, and I think that certainly this further hearing should be continued to a reasonable time after the first of the year, so that this report can be considered by whomever is going to consider it, the planning or the council.
No, I don't think so.
Mr. Shafer, question is addressed to the chair. Mr. Ritchie, we have a number of studies going underway, and it's been this council's action in the past, of course they can change, is that when a study is going on in an area, that normally we have not looked too favorably upon, in the middle of study, the group coming in and appearing on zonings as opposed to planning for the total area. And so the council, by practice, has pretty well gone along then with not continuing items for a interim report on a specific zoning matter from any development group. And so I think this is what was being conveyed by the council, that the continuance was for the consideration on this item that we have a full hearing, because as you know, we've been deadlocked at 4-4, and before we can get any decision at all, the tie-breaking member has to be here so that one action can be taken, either to approve it with 5 votes or to deny it. And so I think that this is an indication. Now, Mr. Shafer, you had an observation?
Your Honor, I was just wondering whether 2 weeks is adequate. I think 2 weeks from now the same argument might be made. When this matter did come out for hearing before, the work of the Southeast San Diego Development Committee was mentioned, and every time we do get into a hearing on anything involving Euclid Avenue, their views as to whether Euclid should or should not become commercial or M1 is always tossed in for what it may be worth. And I actually think the matter should be committed to 30 days for 4 weeks.
Point of information from the chair. Mr. Shafer, then, are you indicating that you as a councilman, that all items rezoning, whether they're approved or denied, be continued in that area until the plan is finished?
I don't like to be put under the gun of the Southeast San Diego Development Committee, and if they're about ready to come in on the 13th or 14th of January, and everybody is customarily 10 days late on sometimes, I actually think it'd be better if we give ourselves a couple weeks to study their January 1st report.
Well, Mr. Shafer, I know you appreciate not being put under the gun, but I'm sure you would also appreciate then the council not being put under the gun. It was reported by our planning director that there is no indication from his staff who are working with the people out there that we can expect the report to go before it even starts in its initial procedures and steps it has to go through until the summer. Is this correct, Mr. Fairman?
Correct. Would you believe a motion for a 6-month continuance?
We have a motion right now for 2 weeks continuance that's been seconded. On the continuance motion.
One more question, Your Honor. Aside 104, it says Mayor Kern, Councilman Hitch absent. Are they disqualified from voting?
The indication at the last of the continuances was that anybody who listened to the tapes of the meetings could be brought up to date and would be eligible to vote.
I can't speak for Mayor Curran, but I would like to say to you that I was present at the November the 3rd and the December 1st meeting, and I listened to every word on the radio on December the 15th, and I'm very well acquainted with this. Okay, sorry.
It's a good point, though, Mr. Scheidel, is that Mayor Kern, who also missed some of the testimony, would not be eligible unless he brought himself up to being eligible by listening to the tapes. So we have a 2 weeks continuance on item 104. Question on that motion? The motion to continue for 2 weeks carries with district number 3 voting no. The remainder of the council voting in favor. Item 105 is a hearing on the matter of rezoning portion of Lot 30, Rancho Mission, Horton's Purchase, located on the west side of Euclid Avenue between Guyman Street and Market Street, from zones R1, 5, and C to zone M1A. The Planning Commission on item 105 voted 4-3 to approve the M1A zoning, subject to the recordation of a final subdivision map within 2 years. An ordinance has been prepared for M1A zoning. Item 105. Are there people here on item 105 in the audience? Fine. If we could have then the report from the clerk, and then we will hear the presentation by the applicant.
Your Honor, is there opposition? If there's no opposition, the planning department doesn't object with this vote, we could save a lot of time.
I understand the planning department does object.
Well, let's ask them.
Gentlemen, if we could ask the chair to ask the gentleman. Mr. Fairman, you've been referred to as a gentleman from planning. Would you please give us the planning department's position on this? Were you opposed? If so, then we'll go ahead with the report. This was your indication, then, Mr. Shuttle?
If there's no opposition, we'd be spinning our wheels, I think.
All right. Was there opposition from their department, Mr. Fairman?
Well, the planning department recommended either denial or a tabling of the matter for 6 months in view of the fact that there is a planning program going on in the southeast area, and that furthermore the proposed rezoning lies within the Euclid market area plan formally adopted by the Commission and Council, which the Council had asked to be reanalyzed, which we're doing in connection with the Southeast Development Plan. So, on the basis of the feelings of the Southeast Development Committee, the fact that the Council had asked us to reanalyze this area, the plan that had been adopted, the staff recommended either a denial on an immediate action basis or a tabling of the matter until around July.
Mr. Clerk, will you read the report then?
The hearing at this time concerns an application to rezone a portion of Lot 30, Rancho Mission Horton's Purchase, from R15 and C to M1A. The property, which comprises approximately 3.3 acres, is located on the west side of Euclid, south of Wyman Street, north of Market Street, in southeast San Diego. The property to the south is developed with commercial and industrial uses. The property to the northwest of Wyman is developed with an elementary school. Property directly to the north of Euclid is vacant. To the northeast and east, the area is developed residentially. The Planning Commission conducted public hearings on this rezoning proposal on October 5 and November 30, 1966. During these hearings, the Planning Department recommended denial or tabling of the requested rezoning. There was no opposition to the proposed zone change at the hearing. However, an objection from Southeast San Diego Planning Committee was reported. At the conclusion of the Planning Department hearing, the Commission voted 4-3 to approve the rezoning as requested, subject to the recordation of a final subdivision map within 2 years. The property is presently zoned R15 and C. A tentative subdivision map did not accompany this rezoning.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Will the applicant then come forward and
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, my name is Jim Baer. I'm the attorney for Mr. Sass, the owner of the property. When he bought the property, it was zoned M1A. Because he had a heart attack, he did not file the final subdivision map. So this on the city maps, etc., is indicated as M1A. We're asking for what the council in the past has approved, and which the Planning Commission did approve 4-3. I have some pictures which I'd like the council to look at. I think it's a little easier to visualize it from some actual pictures. When you see the pictures, there's actually a level graded area slightly above the level of Euclid Avenue. This is the corner of Euclid and Market, and the pictures show the substantial manufacturing type activity which is along Market and adjacent to the property. This is property that really doesn't make any sense to have any other use of than manufacturing. It's been on that way, and my client bought it that way, and because he had a heart attack, he did not file a final subdivision map, and we'd like the council to do what they did in the past, and I don't think there is any valid basis for holding it up on the basis of some further study. If any of the planners would say there's something wrong with this being manufacturing, there might be a basis for delay, but I don't think there is. I don't think they'll say that, and I think it's a fairly simple matter, and I would ask your immediate approval.
Thank you, Mr. Baer. Mr. Fairman, reference has been made that the council has approved this in the past. I was wondering if you could give us the history and when the council did and the time that has elapsed.
The property was previously approved for M1A zoning in 1962, and the approval was made subject to the recordation of a subdivision map within 2 years, I believe. A map was never recorded, and consequently the property remained in the R15 zone and the small piece of C zone. This property lies within an area presently designated on the adopted Euclid market area plan as industrial, and consequently in 62 the Commission Council approved, Planning Department recommended industrial zoning. Again, no subdivision map was filed, the zoning lapsed. But since that date, to give you some further background, which I'm sure you're aware of, a proposal for the development of a community plan in the area, the creation of a Southeast Development Committee, considerable concern over the total development of the Euclid Avenue area, and also a council recognition that the Euclid market area plan should be analyzed in various aspects. The original request to reanalyze the plan was not directed to this particular piece of property, but to the proposals for industrial development within the area.
Mr. Scheidel, question?
Yes. I'm concerned that we hold up waiting for plans to be developed. But today, we have an adopted plan before us, and now we're going to hold up waiting for a reanalysis of this. Now, I'm beginning to wonder at this point, what good is a plan? We can adopt every plan that you recommend to us and then say, now go into further study, and this would be the justification of zoning. This just doesn't make sense to me. What do you suggest we do with adopted plans, such as the Mid-City plan, such as these other plans that are coming up? As soon as they go into continuing studies, which we claim they're ongoing, what are we going to do? Deny zoning? Is this your criteria for denying zoning?
That was a question of the planning director.
Yes.
No, we don't contend that at all, Mr. Scheidel. In this situation, the council itself requested that the adopted plan be reanalyzed, restudied in connection with the Southeast Development Planning Program.
Did that tell you?
The big difference, I think, here is that since the last action, before we had no planning in the area to speak of, and we had no particular interest in planning. Now we've got the Southeast Development Committee, a planning program coming along. Hopefully we'll be producing something this summer in the way of proposals for the area and attempting to resolve some of these problems. The people in that area are seriously concerned over industrial zoning, just a few hundred feet southeast of the elementary school, the main entrance to that school. And I think they perhaps have a point, which we didn't give too much consideration to back 4 years ago. It is a difficult position at this time to say, we should ignore a previously adopted area plan and a previous council and commission action to approve industrial zoning. I'll concede that. But in the interest of the community interest in the development of the area, and in this particular area, in the interest of seeing the planning program come forth with some sound proposals that can be reflected in good zoning patterns in the area, it would seem the better part of wisdom to, in our opinion, to wait perhaps 6 months and take another look at it.
Did I read when I asked before if there was any opposition in the audience? Is there any opposition on this item? Well, then, is there any further questions of Mr. Bear? Or there are questions of Mr. Bear. No questions of Mr. Bear. Okay, Mr. Bear, you may be seated then. Mr. DeKirby first, and then Mr. Hitch.
I don't mean to cut off discussions from the council, but merely to get it out on the floor. Your Honor, since there is no opposition either at the Planning Commission meeting or at our meeting here, and inasmuch as this was approved once before, it is still on the presently established master plan, I would move that the hearing be closed and that the rezoning be granted.
I'd second that motion.
Motion was made by Mr. Kirby, and there was a fight between Mr. Hitch and Mr. Shafer to second it. We'll give it to Mr.
No, there
Shafer.
wasn't. I didn't open my mouth.
I have something more to say when you get to me, Mr. Mayor.
All right, the motion was made by Mr. Kirby, seconded by Mr. Shafer. We do have a motion before us, and close the hearing and to approve the request. Mr. Shafer?
Mr. Walsh, I have, in the last 2 or 3 days, on 2 occasions, have inspected the property, and both from the Hill and from Euclid Street, and I think the requested zoning is in good order. I would say that in all fairness to Mr. Ritchie on item 104, if
Mr. Shafer, we're on item 105.
this request to hold it over for 6 months until the summer, I think this whole Euclid Avenue area is in a period of flux, and I think we should be careful before denying any of this just on the basis of studies that we're trying to wait for. I'm ready to act today.
Before we get into discussion, I'm a little confused, Mr. Shafer. Now, you're opposed to us continuing anything for the studies, and we should not deny anything. Should the reverse be true, then should we approve anything unless we have the studies? Now, I don't know whether you're speaking in favor of the motion or opposed to the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I think on the other matter, I don't...
No, we're on item 105, Mr. Shafer. On item 105, we have a motion before us, which you seconded, to close the hearing and to adopt the rezoning from R15 and C to zone M1A. Now, on that motion...
What about it?
Well, you all right, no further questions, then you'll...
I'm ready to act today on this motion. I'm ready to act today on 104.
Item 105, we have a motion that's been seconded before us. Question on the motion? The item 105 to approve the change to M1A zoning has been approved unanimously by the council. Move a 5-minute recess. Cut off. There we go. Council come to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Cobb, Kirby, Saddlehaw, Moore, Walsh, Shafer, Curran.
Item 106 is a matter of rezoning lots 10 and 11, block 16, Loma Alpha, unit number 1, located on the west side of Mendocino Boulevard between Voltaire Street and Banning Street. This is a request to change the zone from R15 to zone R2. The Planning Commission voted 7-0 to approve the R2 zoning. Item 106, are there people in the audience on item 106? Are you in favor or in opposition? Is there, may I have an indication by show of hands, is there anyone in the audience that is in opposition? Council?
There's no one in opposition, Your Honor. The Planning Department's recommendation?
We recommend approval.
I move we close the hearing and introduce the ordinance.
Second.
Yes, ma'am. We have a motion that has been made and seconded that we close the hearing and approve the request to change the zone from R15 to R2.
My name is Bruce Pruitt. My husband and I own the property designated or requested to be rezoned. And we wish very much to have the council waive the recommendation of the City Planning Commission regarding the filing of the subdivision map. We find upon checking a little bit that this will cost in the neighborhood of $1,000, and that will make it prohibitive to use on this lot in this particular area. There's only one undeveloped lot that's under discussion. The other one, there's 2 lots in the complete re-subdivision that they requested. One of the lots is fully developed with a brand new building. The vacant lot is undeveloped and it's nicely designed or shaped for a duplex, and that's all we want. We want to be able to put a duplex there.
There's about 160 feet of street frontage, and I can't think of a nicer layout for a two-family unit. And I think the lot is shaped such that if we are forced to put a one-family unit there, because the price range of the other homes in the neighborhood, we will not be able to completely cover the lot. In other words, we can't build a large home there.
Well, then, Mrs. Pruitt, what you're saying then is that you are in favor of the recommendation of the commission for the rezoning, but that you are questioning the requirement for a subdivision map then?
I'm requesting that they waive that requirement.
Counsel? Mr. Hitch?
I'd like to know from is it the city engineer that's requesting, or is it the planning department requesting that a map be filed? I want to ask whoever is responsible for it, what is the purpose of a final subdivision map here where all of the improvements are already installed?
I believe that the planning department has the primary responsibility here in recommending that the subdivision map be required, although the city engineer's office, I think, would, in connection with the subdivision map, would require a sidewalk improvement. The reason from the planning department standpoint to require the subdivision map is to combine two lots, one of which is substandard, involved in this rezoning. By combining them, there would be created one 10,000 more or less square foot lot on which 3 units could be built. There's already 1 unit on the property at the present time. This matter was discussed at some length at the planning commission level. That is that as things stood now, there are 2 lots, one of which is substandard. If the rezoning were passed without combining the substandard lot with the other lot to make 1 lot, there could be 4 units built on the property. By combining the substandard lot with the adjoining lot, creating 1 lot, there would be 3 units constructed on the property, which I don't think is inconsistent with what the property owners desired. But this was a matter of concern on the commission and the staff level that, in effect, the 2 lots be combined into 1 R2 lot on which 3 units can be constructed.
Mr. Pruitt, I'm wondering if you...
I have a question.
Okay. Normally, after a presentation, then we ask the people to sit down and ask this question. But go ahead, you can ask your question.
I was not aware that making lot 11 an R2 zone would allow us to build 4 units there. Did I understand him to say that?
No, if I'm correct, he said 3 units.
Well, that's by combining lot 10 and 11.
Right.
And because there is the new improvement on lot 10 already, it would make it, well, unfeasible and unpractical from an economic standpoint to combine the 2 lots. I don't know if you're familiar with financing these days, but there's already a loan on it, and there's no lending institution that's going to allow you to put another loan on that same lot. And it's just like giving a drowning man a drink of water. I mean, we don't need the water. We can't build on that lot if we have to spend $1,000 for filing a subdivision act.
Mr. Cobb, Mrs. Cobb.
Thank you. Am I to understand that there's already 2 units on lot 10 and it's zoned R15?
There's one unit on lot 10, an existing house, and lot 11 is vacant.
And lot 11 is the substandard lot?
No, lot 10 is 40 by 120.
But
the attempt here is to combine 10 and 11 into 1 standard lot on which 3 total units could be constructed, 2 in addition to the existing house.
On lot 11 as is, there could be 3 units on that 1 lot?
No, 2.
2.
If it were zoned R2.
And it is a standard size lot?
Yes.
And if they were combined, there could be 3 units built on it?
If there were no combination of the lots, an additional unit could be constructed on lot 10, which is a substandard
providing it
lot,
were rezoned.
plus two units on lot 11. So that would be an addition of 3 units to what is already existing. If the 2 lots were combined, you could only build 2 units in addition to the house that exists on the property.
Well, let me ask this then. There is an existing dwelling on 10, single-family dwelling.
Correct.
It's a substandard lot. What would be the department's reaction to deleting 10 from this and just rezoning lot 11?
Well, we think that it wouldn't, the only reason for rezoning this property in the first instance is the zoning pattern in the area. And it would seem like deleting lot 10 from the subdivision would leave an island, a little island of R1, surrounded by R2, R4, and whatnot, but this wouldn't be a very good zoning practice.
And if it were allowed without a subdivision map, that is what would actually happen anyway, because, is that correct?
Well, if there were no subdivision map, presumably lots 10 and 11 would be zoned R2, and
As separate lots.
we say there could be an additional unit constructed on lot 10, 2 more units constructed on 11 without a subdivision map.
Mr. Kirby?
If I
Mr.
look at
Scheidel?
that map correctly, the lot 10 is bounded on the south and bounded on the west by R15. Therefore, it would not be an island, but would be adjacent to other 15. I can't quite see the logic in not eliminating 10 from the rezoning and then thereby avoiding the expense of $1,000, which I would like to find out more about the $1,000 cost. Is that not right, Mr. Flanagan?
Yeah, you're correct. It wouldn't be an island.
It would not be.
But you would have the frontage of that R1 lot, lot 10, would be facing R4 zone property. It'd have R2 on the north and RC zoning, commercial zoning, on the southeast. Admittedly, the back end of the lot would be abutting R1.
And the side.
Right.
Mr. Scheidel?
Mr. Kirby touched on the question, why would it cost $1,000 for a subdivision map? Maybe the lady who made the statement would like to answer that.
This cost of $1,000 is probably related to the cost of obtaining the services of a registered civil engineer to prepare the map, do the various searches that are required, draw the map, and submit it.
To delete a lot line?
Right.
To service the city, to get a better zoning practice. Plus, you also have financing on this one project.
That's right, on the
You'd have
lot that is
You'd have to
approved.
pay that off and refinance, the interest rate would go up even adding to that.
That's right. It would really be prohibited. We just would not be able to use it. Not the only one that could do that.
Would you have any objection to deleting lot 10 from the rezoning?
No, sir. I think that would be very good, because our only purpose and intention here is to be able to develop that vacant lot with a duplex, which we feel is much more appropriate for the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Point of information of the planning department. If the suggestion to delete 10, which would leave that R15, was accomplished, then you would have the separate lot and the 2 units being allowed on lot 11. Would it be preferable to stand the chance of an additional unit on lot 10 by going ahead and approving the R2 on both lots, or would it be your recommendation to split and drop out lot 10 and leave that R15? Do you understand my question?
Yes, I think I do. I think it would be preferable to zone the 2 lots and get on with it, because if you just zone lot 11, lot 10 would be a cinch for rezoning, in my opinion, at a later date in any event. And you'd be faced with a 40 by 120 foot lot for R2 zoning, and I think you might as well try and tidy up the zoning pattern here, which is all the zoning is about, in a comprehensive way. Take the 2 properties into consideration.
Mr. DeKirby?
Your Honor, I for one would never consider approving a substandard lot being changed from R15 to R2, and I don't think any other council would either. And to require a $1,000 expense to tidy something up which I question needs tidying, I would move that the hearing be closed, that the ordinance be introduced, amended to exclude lot 10 from the rezoning request. And the requirement for subdivision map fee.
We have a motion on the floor, and then this motion would be to amend the main motion to delete lot number 10 from the main motion. Is this correct, Mr. Kirby?
Yes, but we would still want sidewalks.
Yes.
How would we accomplish that?
Please.
Well, you would still have a subdivision map required, which would be on lot 11, which would have the requirement of the improvements?
No, I think the improvements could be assured by just referring to the engineering requirements, and they could be assured by a permit for the sidewalk construction.
All right, we have then before us a motion to close the hearing and introduce the ordinance to approve R2, and then we have now an amendment to that ordinance, which is to delete lot number 10, but to leave in the engineering requirements.
Your Honor,
Is Mrs. Cobb?
I'll second that motion.
I would withdraw my motion with permission of second, so you can do it very cleanly if you like. Start fresh.
The second was, who was the second to the main motion, Mr. Clerk? Mrs. Cobb? Fine, Mrs. Agreeable, Mrs. Cobb then. Chair will rule then that the board is clear. We're open for a motion.
One more time.
I would move, Your Honor, that the hearing be closed, that an amended ordinance be introduced, which would amendment to delete lot 10, eliminate the requirement for a subdivision map, but retain the requirements for sidewalks.
Fine, then we have a motion then to close the hearing and to amend the ordinance that we have before us, deleting item 10, deleting lot 10, deleting the requirement for the subdivision map, but maintaining the engineering requirement. On the motion, Mr. Hahn, then Mr. Shafer.
In regards to the sidewalk on 11, now, does this mean 10 and the rest of the lots presently do not have sidewalks? Is that right, Mr. Engineer?
Yes, there are no sidewalks in existence abutting the property on Mendocino Boulevard.
On 10 and right down the street?
Pardon me?
On 10 and right down the street, no sidewalks?
No, there are sidewalks in the next block to the south and across the street to the east.
All right, thank you.
The attorney has brought a point up that with the modifications and the changes, it seems that everybody's in complete agreement to accomplish the end purpose of granting the rezoning on the one lot, and the attorney has requested that if it be possible for continuance of 1 week, that he might be able to redraft the ordinance, a sample ordinance, bring it back, the original ordinance that we have today, plus another ordinance in a 2-week period. Mrs. Cobb, do you on that suggestion?
I was going to say 2 weeks, not 1 week.
Oh, okay. I thought you were signaling 2 ordinances.
No, 2 weeks. Oh, one other question, if I may. Are these the only requirements, or is this what the attorney's checking to be sure we've covered the engineering requirements?
This is what he wants to come up, rather than to amend the ordinance here today, to go through research and come back with an ordinance written to accomplish what is obvious the intention of the council is today.
It's a much safer approach, and I would still move 1 week continuance.
2 weeks.
I withdraw my original motion, Your Honor, with common consent.
All right. That's 2 withdrawals, 1 more withdrawal. And Mr. Shafer.
Your Honor, I don't agree with the council on that we all want to rezone the one lot. I think the planning director's made a very good point on going ahead with rezoning of the whole two lots. I think it's unfortunate if we have this little finger of R15 land protruding into Mendocino here when you've got RC next door to it and R2 all along it. This lady sometime in the next 10, 20, 30 years is going to want to sell this 2 lots to somebody, and they're probably going to want to put a duplex on lot 1, 2, and they'll have to come down here and file a couple $100 worth of expenses, and it'll be a cinch, as Mr. Fairman says, but I don't think we ought to put the people in the future to that trouble. And I think it's wise planning, and Mr. Fairman, I agree with him on that we should vote to zone both of them as R2, and I, for one, disagree with your statement that we all agree it should be just 1 lot. I think it's a 2-lot request, and I'd like to support it in its whole.
All right, we have a request for a continuance which has been made and seconded. On the continuance now, 2-week continuance on item 106. The vote is unanimous. There will be a 2-week continuance on item 106. Any unanimous consent items?
Move to adopt unanimous consent items.
Second.
Move to adopt unanimous consent. All those in favor?
Wouldn't it be, Your Honor, wouldn't it be proper to say what the unanimous consent item is?
Normally we read it.
I think it would be.
On the unanimous consent item, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, this is unanimous consent item to 1, authorize a negotiated sale of a portion of Kemper Street which has been closed to Victor Builders, Inc., and B, authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute a quitclaim deed.
Mr. Hom?
Mr. Manager and Mr. Attorney, you see any problems here since we're accelerating the date?
No, we do not. We're simply an intermediary here. Actually, this portion of the street was left vacant after the street alignment was changed. The federal government owned the property. The adjoining private owners couldn't obtain it. It was necessary for a governmental institution to do it. We negotiated this out, and as I say, are acting as an intermediary between the adjoining private property and the federal government.
And you recommend it?
We would recommend it. Yes.
Any question on it? The vote is unanimous. Mr. City Attorney, any unanimous consent? Fine. The meeting is adjourned.